everybody wants to do a lot, and you're always being tugged in a million different directions, and everybody has like FOMO of the brain. Instead of thinking about that one specific event that you might miss out on, think about the things you're possibly going to miss out on the 6 to 8 months preceding that one event.
Good morning, buddy.
Hey, welcome. Ironman Podcast 310.
Episode 310.
310. 310 is the week of Ironman Louisville. But yes, this is the Crushing Iron Podcast. We cover all things triathlon, life, how they intersect. We do race recaps, race reviews. We have the occasional guest, but most importantly, the majority of our podcasts are centered around both you and I's experiences, the athletes' experiences that we work with. You and I have both been I've been coaching and racing for between 10 to 15 years now. You coached a little bit this year, but you have let's say a late bloomer in terms of picking up the sport in your 50s, and have been really successful. You've raced to Ironman every year, so that's what we do. We talk back and forth as a coach athlete and share our experiences, and hopefully you can take those and apply them to your daily life and either avoid some of the pitfalls we've had over our years racing and competing, and then hopefully just do the best we can. We have the occasional live cast as well, but yeah, we just talk about let's just be honest. We talk about the stuff that really happens. This isn't this isn't a 10 best ways to reduce your transition 2 time by using this product. This is more of a
using
triathlon.
This product.
Yeah, exactly. You say it like you laugh, but that's real life. People do that.
Slip and slide into T2.
Slide into T2. But no, that's what we do. We hope you take a lot from it, or at least something from it. We enjoy doing it. We've been doing it for about 3 years, and we'll continue to do so. So yeah, sit back, relax, enjoy, and if it is your first time listening, we appreciate it.
Sit back, relax.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Enjoy your flight.
Get on
your flight aboard Crushing Iron 707.
Yeah. A lot of people enjoy their trainer rides, I think, when they listen to this.
I mean, you got to have something to enjoy your trainer ride, especially because we're about to enter that time of year where, we've officially at least like touched fall. Here it's like rainy and gloomy today, but it has dropped to like the 60s and 70s, which is money compared to the 95 it was here in Chattanooga on Friday. It was brutal, but hey, you take what you can get, and that's fine. And but yeah, trainer rides are good. It's a great time of year for them. But yeah, and listen, treadmills, trainers, whatever. If we can help you kill some time and take up some real estate in your brain to kind of get things rolling, then hey, we do what we can. We're here to serve, and we appreciate you giving us the time. What are you laughing? What are you laughing so much for?
I don't know, man. I think it sounds like you had that kind of condensed. You had a nice little intro there for me.
Yeah, whatever.
It sounds like you've got something on your mind.
No, I don't, man. I've got a lot of topics I could cover today.
Yeah.
But I figured I'd give you the floor and see if you had any. You're in that interim.
I am, man. How am I ever?
We're in definitely 2 different places in terms of where we are, but.
Can I just say, man, I was 2 weeks ago. I was, throwing around this idea of going back to back with an Ironman within a month. Wait, 5 weeks? 4 or 5 weeks?
5 weeks, yeah.
Wisconsin to Louisville, and man, that's just not. I mean, for a guy my age, probably a lot of people really, but it just feels like I'm just so glad I didn't sign up.
Why is that?
Well, because I think I was flying on the high off the race, and I just thought I felt pretty good. I was like, well, I got the fitness, and I can probably bring it right back. But in the long run, I just think over time I've needed to decompress and let my body take a little break. And I think it got kind of confused. We get caught in that momentum of racing and the chasing the next mountain or whatever it is, and I just think it's the best thing for me is just to chill, man.
So let me ask you this, because I don't think it's. I think what you're talking about, or what you were kind of going through and have since then decided against, is not really uncommon. I don't think people necessarily go to the extent of, because it is like right now is a very transitional time of year for a lot of athletes, and we can definitely go that route today in terms of deciding, and defining where you want to go for the remainder of this year and then even the next year by doing, I think like a thorough objective analysis of what went wrong, what went right, and what you have time for. And so I think that, I think again, not to the extent of doing another Ironman 5 weeks out. But to be fair, I think if it was an Ironman Louisville and it wasn't close and you hadn't done it multiple times, there wouldn't even been a thought.
That's
Like if
true.
Ironman,
Yeah.
like Ironman Louisville already would have passed and there was nothing else left and it was, nothing within like 5 or 6 hours of your home there in Nashville, you wouldn't even have it wouldn't even have been there. Or if it was, well, Ironman Florida's there, but you just have no interest in doing that. Louisville just has, I think as we covered last week, it's a race you really like. So again,
Yeah.
that kind of draws you to it, but there's always this like last grasp at like racing straws for the year, because a lot of athletes do struggle when they spend so much time and they devote so much effort in boosting their fitness and creating this huge amount of fitness gains throughout the course of a year, and they go on race day and they either have a really great race, so they want to go out and they want to express it again because they feel so good and they don't want to just go in the off season, or they had a mediocre or a poor race in their own eyes, or they didn't really let it rip the way they wanted to. Things didn't materialize the way they thought. Maybe they went to Ironman Chattanooga and they had this great fitness, and it was, they succumbed to the heat, or what they thought was going to happen was dimmed because of the environment and the temperature. So everybody always kind of looks, all right. They scroll through their like try find calendar or the local like running race. They're like, all right, what can I do next? Like, what can I just like latch on one more thing? It's like being in a relationship with a person and it's not going to work out, and you're like, yeah, what's one more date?
Hmm.
What's that? Just let's do one more. And then you're like, all right, where do I want to go? Do I want to go to an expensive restaurant or a cheap restaurant? And then you're just kind of biding your time because you're like, I know I should be over. I just don't want it to be over yet because then I'm gonna be single. And that's where triathletes find themselves right now. They're like, a lot of people go into the off season as, in terms of like racing, is they go back to like being single. They don't have any, race
Exactly.
relationship to attach to. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you were going all in to like getting married in your last date versus other people are looking at like 5Ks, 10Ks, road races, and long swims, whatever. They're just like latching onto something. And I think it's an interesting uh, kind of topic to cover in terms of why athletes think that way. But then again, what you really need to be doing this time of year is just kind of decompressing. And I think that's incredibly scary for athletes because they don't like what they find. I don't, well, maybe it's too harsh. I guess maybe they're not as comfortable going what they might feel is going backwards by taking the time to decompress physically and emotionally and mentally on what exactly happens when you train, and then when you go for a race, and then afterwards what happens. And I think it's a very difficult time of year for athletes to ask themselves questions to figure out where they want to go and what they really want to do, and then also to take a step back and realize that you can't maintain the same amount of hours year round and expect to see huge improvements. You have to undulate the training up and down. You have to manipulate the intensity. You have to be flexible. Like I just got off the phone right before this podcast with a guy who I just started to work with, and he was like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to Door County this weekend, and so I think I'm gonna move my rides around, and I like to do a spin on this day." But I was like, "What are you going to Door County for?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just a little mini vacation with my wife." And I was like, "Dude, then don't work out.
Ugh.
Like, dude, we're in October. Like, the race you're even talking about doing is in June. Take the day off." And now obviously that's not the same for everyone. Some people have gone into like total triathlon training recluse mode where they're like, I'm basically a shut-in. I'm not going to go train. I am done. I burnt on my biscuits this year. I don't have a race, so I'm just going to put on about 45 to 50 pounds and I'm going to chill out. But so yeah, it's a huge topic, and while there are again a lot of athletes racing this weekend and over the next 8 to 10 weeks with other races going on, marathons, Ironman Florida, Ironman Arizona, Ironman Louisville, um, I think it's a good topic, and one that's uncomfortable for athletes to not just jump from Ironman to Ironman or race to race without doing some very hard introspective work on what went right, what went wrong, and then most importantly, what they truly have time for.
Yeah. And I think that's what I was getting at more than anything is that I have to, I feel good about stepping back and thinking about really what's best for me in the long term. And in a way, it's kind of like if when you take the races out, and we talk about how we've talked about it before, how it's kind of good to have a race on the calendar because that keeps you focused long term. But sort of like if you don't have one on the calendar and you're not really sure what's going on, you have to really look inside of yourself and sort of start looking at really what the most important things in our life are. And while triathlon is hugely important and it plays a massive role in my health and my well-being, and it is important, it isn't the only thing, but it kind of feels in a little way like you lost your phone or something, and it's kind of a freak out situation, like what should I be doing right now? And then I think when you pull back from the race and just let yourself kind of settle for a while, and then you think about it and do your meditations or whatever you're going to do, and you start to figure out, okay, how do I get more balanced? And that's kind of where I'm at is yeah, just it is a balance thing for me, man. I just sometimes you get pouring down that road to Ironman training, and it feels good, but um, if you do a lot of them in a row, and then you step back and it feels weird. It's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's like stepping away from something that's kind of got you hooked in there. And
Oh, it's got a lot of people hooked because again, and I think the sport in general, because of the fact that it's an actual brand and a business and not just an event and a race, is the phrase Ironman is people like once they go there, they're like, well, what if I don't go there again?
right,
And what is that what's that gonna say about me? What am I gonna talk to my friends about? Like I'm not doing one this year. And I
yeah,
think
that's
that
so huge, man.
and I think one of like the biggest like, and I know that I'm sure this is like maybe looking too far into it, and I know there's always an argument about balance, and can you even have balance, and like
Yep.
is it like, and I've gone through the same thing here myself recently, and this is that I think when it comes, I think balance and boundaries are kind of interchangeable in a lot of ways. And I think while a lot of people struggle with balance when it comes to triathlon and the hobby that it is, and not treating it like a profession or like they're a professional, and how it goes with family and work and other relationships and just taking care of themselves. Because again, like it's triathlon should complement your life. It should bring value to your life. It should make you more fit. It should make you a more healthy person. It should, the benefits you get from it should go beyond the physical improvements that you see into creating positive change for you mentally and emotionally. But what a lot of times happens is it becomes so much of an obsession that I honestly do think that a reason that this day and age when people become obsessed with numbers and data and comparison and doing every workout exactly how they think it should be done, and they can't miss a day and they can't take any time off because now it says something about them, that it becomes incredibly unhealthy. And so while you think about having balance, I think a lot of it actually comes back to having boundaries. And while I think trying to create balance is a good thing, I think we have to look objectively at our life and try to better understand, is it balance that we're trying to create, or as I know that like Brad Stolberg and Steve Magnus's book, like The Passion Paradox, they say like balance is basically like a myth. Like there's no such thing as balance. If you want to be really, really good at something, then you have to go all in and basically not totally neglect everything else in your life, but you have to understand that you can either be great at like one or two, like maybe max three things, or you can try to be good at like seven. And what usually happens is I think, because I've been there before, is that when you try to be pretty good at like five, six, seven things, then you become so stressed out about the other ones that you're not doing at the one time you're trying to make this one thing good, that you're never really truly there. You're never really truly present. So you're just kind of like treading water with good, which again, there's nothing wrong with good. A lot of people would say that being, that great is the enemy of good. But I think when you're and being good is, well, being good is great. But you get what I'm saying? Is that
Being
you
good
get,
is,
you get what
yeah.
I'm saying? Is that
Being
there's
good
only
is good
so
enough.
being good is good enough. But I think again, like when you go back and you look at your life and where you are, I think it's hard for athletes when they have grown, they have seen, they have identified, or even to a point identified themselves as a triathlete or a quote unquote Ironman or whatever distance it is to objectively take a look back. I did that recently, and I sent an email out to uh, our team just to kind of, because listen, I expect the athletes that I work with to keep me in the loop with their life, because again, we coach people first and we coach athletes second. And everything going on in your life is important. So if I ask that from them, I want to do the same in return and share with them my thoughts, and hopefully they can take something from that and turn it to like a positive spin, or just me kind of, I guess, practicing what I preach. And that over the past, I haven't raced all year. Well, that's a lie. I raced like this last Saturday, but I do have to give a quick shout out before I forget
Oh yeah.
to my wife. I ran a half marathon with her, and I pushed Hayden. And although we left early, she was on the podium in her age group.
Right on, man.
Yeah, so I have to give her props to my wife for hitting it hard and doing an awesome job training. And it was fun. And this is a quick side note, but if you ever want to like not feel as much pain as you should, go pace someone in a race. Like go to a race and the last thing that you're thinking about is yourself. We went into this race and quote unquote race, and I knew I was going to push Hayden in the stroller, and it was coming like towards the end of a very high a fairly high run volume week for me. I think I was going to go over like just over 41 miles for the week. And I had ran hard the previous day, and so I knew that it was going to be uncomfortable. But for her run, she had to get a specific time in order to do the most important thing in her life, which is these Disney marathons. And so it was kind of a big deal.
Hmm.
And so I looked at her and I just said, listen, you can have your watch on, but just don't look at it. And I will pace you the whole way. Let me take charge of the pacing. Let me start you out slow, and then you just tell me if you ever get to a point to where you're over like a 7 or an 8 before we get to mile 10. And so we pay. But anyway, so if you want to like ever do a race where you're probably like fatigued and not feeling great, then go do something like that with a friend during like a half marathon or whatever. And because I was in not feeling very good shape in terms of like pushing Hayden in the stroller. He's weighing like 40 pounds, but making sure we paced her, because that up to a point like mile 7 or 8, I was like, this does not feel good.
Mm.
But it became also like, yeah, but you're not going to just stop and walk because you have a job to do. But it was interesting. It was fun. We had a blast. But anyway, kudos to her. But it was my first like quote unquote like race of the year. I've been really struggling the last 6 to 8 months, and even towards the end of last year with as a coach who has athletes, and they have a lot of aspirations and they achieve things. Like I was trying to be like really, really good at an athlete myself, a coach, a father, and a husband. And while at the same time, and this is again where I think boundaries and balance kind of intersect, and that I have created boundaries with myself in that while my job is flexible and I have this kind of life, because I don't know how long I'll have it, I want to try to get all my workouts done, all my training done, basically Monday through Friday during what I would consider work hours, like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then very rarely get in a session on the weekends. So that means longer rides and swims and everything else, and most runs done during that time frame. Well, that also falls into my work schedule, obviously, and that's also hugely important, because I want to keep that flexibility with Hayden. I want to pick him up from school. I want to be there for him. I don't want to be hopping on the trainer at 7 o'clock at night. That's just not kind of where my heart is at the moment. But I was still trying to do that. So I found myself, I don't want to say, no, I will say stressed. I think that's honest.
It's fair.
Stressed Yeah, I think I found you know this because I talked to you about it, that I found myself stressed, like that I was, I guess stressed and stretched are like two are very similar things. That I was stretching myself so thin by trying to maintain my own workouts to the level of which that I'm accustomed to and that I like and that I want like to push myself, while also coaching at the level that I want to coach at, while also being there as a husband the way I want to be there, and then also, and most importantly, being there as a father the way I want to be there. And I found myself like, I don't want to say constantly distracted, but constantly worried that I wasn't doing them all good enough. And even if I was on, if I was, spending time with Hayden, it was like, I wonder if I'm doing a good job here, but also still have enough time to be good at the other things too. And so I finally just had to have like a real hard conversation with myself and just say, listen, like, do you want to just kind of like be stressed and worry about being good at all these and not being totally, as present as you probably could be with all of them because you have maybe one too many things on your plate, versus taking one out and is kind of, or maybe reducing it by a large extent, and then kind of relieving some of that pressure and stress so you're not stretched so thin, and then try to be great. And that was ultimately the decision that I made, was just at this moment in time, the thing that makes the most sense to me and where I am in my life is just to run. And I can run from my back door. I can run whenever I want to. I can run with Hayden. I can run with Allie. I can run to a trail behind her house. I can be outside. Because I think that was another thing that, and I think it's super common with athletes that I've ever dealt with, seasonal depression or burnt out or being burnt out or overtraining, losing motivation, is that they find themselves not being outside. You swim inside. A lot of athletes run inside. And pretty much everyone only rides inside now. And so you lose the benefit of like what nature and the sunshine and everything else does for your body. So anyway, that's a topic for a wholly different day.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just kind of made the conscious decision to step back from racing personally and just do the run races that I want to do and do that. And then just strictly focus on being the greatest father I can be, the greatest husband I can be, and the greatest coach I can be, because that's going to take more time. And the amount of relief that I felt by making that decision was tremendous. I mean, I feel like I've already become better at all three. I know you can't get better like in a week, but I think the relief, because of what it does, I think, is it also allows you to really truly be present in what you're doing, because you're not worried about it taking up too much time to not be able to do something else. And so to kind of piggyback that in back on, because but to be fair, that's also like, those are the boundaries that I've set for myself. The boundaries of not wanting to spend 3 to 4 hours away in a weekend. And to be totally fair, that's one of the, and I've had this conversation with a lot of uh, new fathers and new mothers over the past 3 years. And I know we're going like way off topic here, but um, was the how hard it's become, and or not how hard it's become, but how difficult it has been, and that I didn't anticipate to not want to be away from Hayden and then Allie when we've created this family. And then it's kind of like, you start this journey and you start racing triathlon, you have this one like fixture in your mind that I want to do this and I want to qualify for this, and this is the standard that I've been in. And arguably last year was, well, it was my most successful year racing. And then to like have all these things like come to a head, it was just kind of like, now what I still want to do this, but is it still me wanting to do this? And I think athletes find themselves in that this time of year, because I'll be totally honest, like even this last weekend, like tracking people, and even like the previous weekend Ironman training, was like, oh dude, like I would love to do this race. No, I don't. And it wasn't like, no, I don't. It was, and I think this is the number one question most people have to ask themselves is, do you want to do this? Sure. Are you willing to take the time and make the time, not just for this, but are you willing to take X amount of time away from something else? And I think this time of year, and obviously you don't have to come to like some huge conclusion like I came to, but I think just having that conversation with yourself and realizing and understanding that they're actually good, to have in terms of like where you are in your life. Are you going to be stretched in? Because I think that triathletes in general, and we even see this in what I would argue is a very tame and fairly calm closed Facebook group, compared to what you see in other ones. And even in this one, I see and read things, and I'm like, dude, like I don't know if the sport is actually complementing your life.
Yeah.
Because if you're stressing so much about these things, then is what's the net positive? And I just do. I think it's a great time of year, and it's always a great time of year to do some self-reflection and figure out, what is it you truly want to, and is it the same thing? And like I said in the beginning, it's like when I was kind of joking about relationships, is you you start dating people, whenever in your teens or early 20s, and you think you know what you want out of a person, what you want out of a person you're going to marry, and then like 8 years later you look back and you think, wait a minute, I was an idiot. Because you've changed. Your life has changed. The things you want out of a relationship, out of the rest of your life have changed. And now you're looking for somebody totally different while you've been stuck looking for the wrong person. And I think people do that with racing and with triathlon and running and cycling and swimming. And again, I think it's that's my very long-winded, random, non-constructed outline way of saying, think about it.
Think about it.
Think about
Step
it.
back and think. Well, if I may quote Rich Roll, there's a lot to unpack there.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. Well, get unpacked.
Man. Well, yeah. The thing about me is like sometimes what you said is, yeah, you want to race. I wanted to, you always kind of feel that when you're standing around watching an Ironman or something like, man, I want to be out there. And you kind of want that, that sort of attention or that feeling of being in the spotlight, or people are tracking you or whatever. And I get that more and more. I mean, I'm getting older too, so I'm kind of at this crossroads of my buddy used to tell me, is like, eventually one of these years you're gonna have your last PR, and that kind of rang in my head. But I also feel like that I'm still in the shape where, even at 56, I guess I'm racing at 56. I still have good years ahead of me. I think I can still get better, and that's a really cool feeling. So I think that's at the bottom line what triathlon's done for me. I feel strong right now. I can tell that I'm in really good shape, even though I don't feel like doing anything, just by doing simple things like mowing the lawn or whatever. I just feel stronger, but I don't feel like putting that energy in. But what you were saying about, backing it down to running only, simplifying, to me, that's like everything, because today the opportunities to do anything are almost endless. And you can, you talk about the stuff away from triathlon, but start with triathlon. All right, let's get really good at swimming, biking, and running, and nutrition. And that alone is a tremendous weight, because like, if you feel like, man, my bike's really getting in good shape, but man, I haven't swam in 2 or 3 weeks, that kind of thing always happens. Then all of a sudden you've got, this opportunity. You want to be a photographer, you want to do videos, you want to write books, you want to be a comedian, do Instagram, Twitter, sell this, do that, whatever. Everything's out there, and it can be a tremendous weight. And then you're like, oh man, I didn't run today, and whatever it is. And I look around my house and I see all these books of things that I've bought in the past that tell me that was something I was passionate about at one point. And then it always triggers, like, why didn't you do that, man? Oh man, and now I got like this going on, and I want to get better at this, and I want to play drums, and I want to do all these things. And let's face it, man, training for Ironman is like a big monster in your life. And not only does it keep your focus and sort of like distract you from the other things that maybe you do want to do, it's an energy tightrope. So as we were talking about, I think a couple of weeks ago, the energy level that can be gained to focus on other things at this time, or like simplify it down to the run like you are, I think that's a major play. I mean, I think we just have to really think about our energy levels and where we're putting that energy, because it's sort of finite in a way. I mean, even though I believe in infinite energy and things like that, but
Well, I mean, it's
the
again like, and
boundary
it doesn't
part of
have.
it is huge.
Yeah, and again, like, if it's your first time listening, we're not anti-triathlon. This is like the worst promotional
I
podcast
know
ever.
we're going
But
to talk everybody out of this.
but No, but I think, and this is what we do like to do, we talk about what we're going through personally, because I 100% guarantee you other people are going through this thought process, either afraid to admit it because they feel like they're going to lose their identity, or like what's going to happen, and or or what now. And I think one of the opportunities that we miss, and sometimes we forego in this obsession with any endurance endeavor, is the ability to allow for self-discovery. And the only times I've ever found myself really latching onto and figuring out and doing some self-discovery that's meaningful and impactful is when I haven't had something so pressing or stressing with it to partner it with. It's been on a random run or a random ride or a random swim that I look back and I look at the experience first and what it meant to me and then what I got from it. Not the like almost the how rigid athletes are to adhering to specific things. And again, like don't get me wrong, like I am 100% behind triathlon. I love it. It's my life. I mean that's a huge
Yeah.
that's another huge part of it, I think, is that you as an athlete, it's like, and again, like this is why triathlon is such a huge part of everyone's life that does it, that's probably doesn't coach, is that as a coach, like when you love it and you live it, it is your whole life. And if you need sometimes to find things that are just for you, that you don't have to share, creating that's kind of what I would consider like a good, positive, selfish space. And whether it's, and it doesn't have to be obviously just taking up running. It could be picking up cyclocross. It could be picking up more long distance. Something like, again, like we're in this to benefit ourselves. And it could be just going down from doing full Ironman to doing like halves and sprints, whatever it is. Like, again, like this is, and this is like the reason we started the podcast was, yes, triathlon related, but it's about life and how we push ourselves and how we grow. And I think a lot of people have found themselves stuck in not growing because they've been so stressed and so rigid that they're kind of like they're just not seeing the whole picture, not seeing the forest, the trees, or however you want to put it. But again, like while this might not be like the best podcast for a triathlon related podcast, the point we're trying to make in probably a terrible way, but hopefully a good way, is that it's perfectly fine and it's incredibly healthy to look and see like how your life is right now and accept that instead of being so stressed. It should complement things, and it's okay to deviate. It's okay to change. Again, that should complement your life. And you could be also on the flip side. You could be, and I've had athletes reach out to me that I coach that are like their kids are gone and they're like, yeah, I was at your place and now I'm at this one where I have all this free time. My kids are out of the house. Now is the time for me. And they're like, and so they have to, like, again, like on the flip side, if you've been, constrained, or you've had boundaries based around, your profession or your personal life, and you've always saw yourself as this kind of athlete, now you have all this extra free time. You're like, whoa, 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 like I can achieve other things. I can use this time. I'm not just so constrained to the way I was, because I think we're always late to our own party. Always. Like I think, and what I mean by that is I think our life is a specific way. Things are happening. We're understanding things. We're seeing things. And then about 3 months later, we're like, oh yeah, my life is like this. And but we're like 3 months, like we're like 90 days late to react to it in a beneficial, positive, understanding way. We're just late to our own party. Like I probably knew that decision 3 months ago. I was just fighting it because I was so stuck in the way that I've always felt, and like going to race all the time. Like, God, I would love to do this race, but do I really want to deviate the time, to do it? No, I don't. Not right now. I want to do other things. I want to spend more time coaching. I want to spend more time learning. I want to spend more time going to races and with Hayden and with Ali. So again, like when you put out a race calendar and you want to do things, again, like everybody wants to do a lot, and you're always being tugged in a million different directions, and everybody, you know, has like FOMO of like the brain. And like, but you think of what you're, and so flip it. Take your FOMO and then think, what am I going to miss out by stretching myself too thin by trying to do this thing that my three other buddies are doing? I have no business doing it. I know this is probably a bad idea, but I'm getting swept up in the moment. I'm going to do it anyway. Instead of thinking about that one specific event that you might miss out on, think about the things you're possibly going to miss out on the 6 to 8 months preceding that one event. It's like
Uh,
reverse FOMO.
reverse FOMO. Yeah. Well, how do we step back, man, and look at things from the big picture? I like what you said there. We're always late to our own party because you kind of, people know, what's going on. They can kind of tell what's going on with you, but you just sort of know too, and you won't kind of admit it. And for me, it's like almost, and it doesn't have to be triathlon. I think it's just sort of a modern day thing that we're just so in the grind with and just pouring down the pipeline without looking around, whether it be at work or whatever. And the next thing you know, you look up and you're like, where the heck am I? And you got to kind of step back and say, hey man, it's all right to kind of take off the blinders of this path and really figure out where you want to do. And that's the thing about it, is like, obviously love triathlon. It's my life too. And I just try to find that sweet spot all the time. And that's what we're talking about, really. I mean, I don't have the answers, and I don't claim to always have the answers, but I like to at least bring out situations that feel relevant in the big picture, because this is a sport I really love and I hate. It's sort of like starting a job that you really love and you think you want to do. And it's like I did that with sort of TV. I got into the TV business a long time ago, and it was all about videos and creating stuff like that. And it was such a grinder of a job that, it was really equivalent to triathlon in a lot of ways. I was working, 10, 12 hours a day and then going in on the weekends and doing all this stuff. And about 10 years into that thing, I just hated it. And that's the kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing that I want to step away from. It's like, that's what I'm cautious of, because I've seen a lot of people in triathlon just go balls to the walls. This is it all, the be all end all. And the next thing you know, they're not racing ever again. They hate everything about it. So it's like the ability to, and I know those guys said there's no such thing as balance, but obviously there is. It is about, and it's like a microcosm of recovery days or something. It's like, take a little, like your season has to have recovery,
Mm-hmm.
and that, what that looks like may not be swim, bike, run, like you were saying. It might be some other stuff, mountain climbing, whatever it is. I don't know, but
It's it's also, and I know there's quite a few people I know that use that term, like, what season of life are you in? And and to like piggyback off that phrase I use of like being late to your own party, there are a lot of people dressed in winter gear when their life is at 95 degrees. They're just like, that's their season of life, and their goals and what they're putting out there is just totally mismatched. It's like not, but we do the same thing, and we've done the same things in the past with, and a lot of people, I know you did this with, when you just said it, like with our jobs. Like, you don't like your job, you're not happy there, it doesn't interest you anymore, you aren't engaged in it, but you would just come back to, well, it's just kind of what I've always done, or what else am I going to do? And you're just like, I think a lot of people are just terrified to think, all right, well, what if I just go do something completely different and figure something else out? Because again, like, we change, we change as people, and like you and I have been best friends for 7 years, and we've changed drastically, as people in just those 7 years. And so I think that also lends itself to like things that you're attracted to doing, or things that fulfill you, or things that don't fulfill you, or things that you now need to cut out of your life, or things that you need to add back in. And I think that it's always the things that, like, the highest level of simplicity that we tend to like overlook and overcomplicate, because that's, again, like what I think most people do with the majority of their lives is, if it's not complicated, it's not right, or if it's not complicated, it's not good enough. Like, and I still, like, I always find this fascinating when athletes will like send me a text or an email, and like you and I both got one this last weekend that was like, I really appreciate your common sense approach. I'm like the fact that having a simple, like, common sense approach to training, that's like the outlier these
I
days,
know.
is absolutely baffling to me. That I'm like, that the fact that being quote unquote not special is now special is like, it blows my mind that you can be like lauded or complimented, or that you're the rarity because what you do is simplistic and common sense. When when the fact of the matter is, A, that's what works, but B, is it like everything else is just decoration and dressing, and has like very little substance. And so I think that, again, and that was like, I was thinking about this last weekend. As you know, I took some extra time, and Allie and I finished up our backyard this weekend and put the fire pit and finished all that out. And I remember it was like, Ironman Chattanooga this last 2 weeks ago, or last weekend, was 1 year to the day that we found this lot, and that we were like, hey, like, I think we could move here. But then we thought about all the things that we would have to go right in order for us to live here, like, anytime soon. Because I remember I looked at this lot that we live on now, and I remember I looked at Allie, and I was like, there's no way that's gonna be available by the time we can, like, actually move. It's just not possible. And so usually your first thought's like, no, why even, like, keep going down that road if you think there's, like, no way possible? And so, but we just kind of kept, going around. I've lived pretty much in Nashville my whole life, outside of like a couple years here and there. She lived all over because she's dad was in the military, and my entire family lives in Nashville. You live in Nashville, so no one has ever moved. And so as we started to, like, go through, like, the process of, like, logistically, like, actually thinking of it, we took a lot of risks. I wouldn't say they were, like, terrible, very risky things to do, but we didn't know how things are going to work out. We didn't really know. We ended up, a year later, in the lot that we wanted, in the house that we wanted, in a place that we want to live in, which looks totally different than what we thought our life would look like just a year and a half ago. And so I just think it's one of those things where, again, it's not just triathlon endurance sports related, but it is, professionally and personally related, and, like, to recognize that you're changing and things are changing. And that you have to, if you don't respect that, then you're going to miss out on what's going to fulfill you in certain parts of your life, because you're so worried about what fulfilled you 5 years ago that you have no idea, or you can't make any plans or do anything actionary to fulfill yourself of what's going to happen 5 minutes ago or what's going to happen in 5 minutes.
Mm.
And then, again, like, we just miss out on that party and on those experiences, because, again, like, we're just so stuck there. And until finally somebody's like, hey, like, you've changed a lot. And you're like, really? I had no idea. I thought this, this and this. So, again, like, this isn't just about triathlon. It's about assessing your life and being okay where it is. And, I don't remember what podcast this was, but I was like, just don't be the don't be the guy who shows up to their 15-year college reunion in their leather jacket from high
Yeah.
school. Like, don't be the guy that's, like, cruising around the drag or the strip, and you're, like, in your small town, like, cruising the square in his leather jacket from his senior year when he played quarterback, like, 8 years before that, and now he's, like, the greeter at the Ace Hardware store. Like, don't be that guy. Don't be that guy, as that analogy, is used in triathlon. It's like, just let people have their well, not part of it, let people have their moment, but it's like, don't be blind to having your own, because you're so stuck in who you were and how things were previously, and don't be afraid to make those decisions, uh and just figure out where you are, and then be happy with it and understand that those things change.
Right. The opportunities, I feel like the opportunities are just immense right now in general. I mean, you mentioned that you didn't think you're going to be able to have that house and all that kind of stuff wasn't going to come together. Obviously, it was possible, and you've pulled it off, and it worked. So it's like we're all sitting here with these amazing opportunities in life, and just the ability to do it and to try something new and take a risk or step out of your comfort zone, because that's what I think too happens a lot, is that we just get so familiarized, and it's hard to accept the idea that something can be better, because it's like you're so used to it. You're kind of, that's why I feel like maybe a little bit in my Ironman training is, it's like I've been going on the same road, I keep doing the same Ironman. I look up, I'm like, well, I mean, it's a good thing, right? That I've kept doing them, and I kept doing them fairly well, and but they're all the same to me, and I'm kind of like, man, I feel like something needs to give here, and it's not because I don't like it. It's just that it's not fulfilling me in the same way. So what is that? I don't necessarily know, but the opportunities are there. You just kind of need to step back and look at them and then take one and go down that road.
How often do you think? Because I think that's such a great line. Is because I think people now are so afraid to not know because we live in this world of like, you know, of such there's so much misinformation out there, but there's also such information, but it's often like that's why like I think people are on the internet all the times because there is great information, but it's usually like clouded and masked by like 90% of the worst information that's not even true. But people are afraid to just say they don't know anymore. And I think a lot of times people will latch onto something that they're not fully behind just for the sake of not being in a position where they don't know. Like, you just said like, you just don't know right now. Most people would say, well, they'd be like, you know what? I'm gonna know. I'm gonna sign up for this race and now I know where I'm gonna be next year because they're so terrified of like not having an answer that that's somehow like a bad thing when some of the greatest periods of your life are usually in like or in phases of like or phases of growth rather are in these times of your life where you don't know things, so you're trying to explore, you're trying to figure things out, and that's when you end up going on a different path that leads you to a different place or a different job or a different person or a different city, you know or different races. And it's okay to not know, and there's no timeline, there's no expiration date on when you have to know. It's at least admitting that you're not really sure what you want to do, and that's 100% totally fine, because the worst thing you can do is jump back in to something just for the sake of doing it. Just get to back on like the relationships analogy. It's like people who are absolutely terrified to be single and jump from like one person to one person because they're terrified to be single. They have no idea what they want, but they just know they want to keep dating. And that's how people do triathlon sometimes. Like they have no idea what they want to do or what they have time for, what distance they want to do. But you know what they're going to do? I'm going to sign up for 19 races next year, so now my race calendar is full. So you're just busy being busy instead of taking the time to maybe be a little more focused on figuring out exactly what it is. So you might sacrifice a couple of months, but that's going to set you up for major success the following years versus just making a decision so you think but really it is just you're just busy being busy.
Mm. It takes a lot of, I don't know, maybe courage to step back and like if you're training for something deep in the next year and it's already got you stressed, or you know what I mean, like I feel like that happens a lot too, where I just signed up for this race and it's a year from now and I can't miss a workout this weekend, or or whatever it may be. And how do you how can we use this time right now, this Q4, as an opportunity to really build a solid foundation, not only for training, but for our mental approach and all these kinds of things? That's the kind of stuff I think about. Like, what are the things that you think would round out your emotions and because there's time right now and it's hard to be patient with that, and it's hard to accept. I think sometimes it's like, well, this doesn't seem like it's working. Well, I'll give it some time. Give it some time and do those things right now that it's like I, as a lifelong sort of intermittent meditator, that's one of those things where it's like, well, I really need to start meditating, and this first one needs to be 45 minutes or whatever it is. It's like, I can't accept sometimes the idea that like, hey, dude, just start sitting for 5 minutes at a crack once in a while,
Yep.
and then get used to it and let that build, and then, but like you said, it's hard to, and that's why I always advocate writing, is because you can kind of look back on that and say, oh man, this is where I was, because if you're, and even with like you said you ran 40 miles. I mean, probably what, 6 weeks ago you were maybe 10 miles, I don't know, but
Yeah,
like
10 or 15.
it's hard sometimes to recognize what we're doing if we don't pay attention to it. Like, if I started meditating for 5 minutes today or this week, and by next week it was 10, and then 3 months from now it's like I am solid at 40 minutes or 30 or whatever it is, then I think that's all. I don't remember where I came from, and I think that's important to do. Is that because you're always like, oh man, well now it's got to be an hour or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Yep.
can't accept the idea that a 30-minute run is like gold for you right now. You know, that's like
It,
massive.
yep. It's a hard. I think it's hard to get to that point, but then once you do it, I think you see everyone sees the benefit in like the beginning of a process. Like, it's like we can call us Q4 or Q1 all we want to, but it's really just transitional training. It's transitioning you to prepare for next year, or it simply might just be complementing where you are in this transitional phase of not knowing or not being sure. Because like who, because again, and you could probably you can compare it to like spectating an Ironman. It's like it's a whole lot of hurry up and wait. And just like if you're trying to figure things out, but you just got to keep showing up. And if you can fall in love with one thing and it not be a race, the one thing you should fall in love with is just trying to get better and just being consistent and showing up a practice. And that was like another part of the email that you and I both got from an athlete was that one of the biggest things they've gained from working with us has been just showing up and doing the work and becoming consistent. And that the benefit of that has become more of a way of life. And then the benefits have come from it, not I want benefits and then I'll get consistent, which is the way that most people want it. They want that immediate kickback, that immediate return. And I think it's one of the more underrated aspects of why people do end up getting coaching and the benefits they see is the increase in consistency and then what that does to your life, and it becomes a way of life and something you can do as just a daily practice versus it has to be a stepping stone to this event or this one day. It can just be about becoming who you are of just going to run or just going to ride. Like anytime somebody comments like this, I'm going for a ride, this is my happy place. Like that's the point.
Yeah,
You
that's
should
so good.
that's the point, is to do it because you love it. And like you don't it's like do it's always feels more gratifying to do something for someone else than it does for yourself. And that's what I think, like that argument or that tug of war we have as humans, and then as sometimes data obsessed triathletes, is that tug of war between our human self and that data obsessed triathlete. And that when we go out for runs, sometimes all we're focused on is this like triathlete and what we get from it versus what we get from it as a human. And I think when people comment on things like runs or rides or something like, oh, this is my happy place, then you know what they got out of it. It was like almost 0% triathlete related and 100% for them as a person. And that's where you grow, and that's where you feel energized, and that's where you're able to stay away from getting burnt out and being drugged down, and not being objective and having the wrong perspective is having that, again, like those boundaries between athlete and person. And the one you're going to be stuck with with your whole life is the person. And so you want to find things that complement and encourage that and not suffocate it and drown it.
In a way, this podcast has kind of been one of those things for us. It's sort of like hey, bro, we got to step back and have a little conversation about some stuff. It's. I think that's one of the reasons why this podcast has been so consistent is because I like these kind of conversations, and I think you do too. I think it's important to have them, and sometimes we can't, we can't talk about doing intervals and all the technical stuff of everything all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of healing in a way for us, I think, that we can actually kind of look at the big picture and talk about the stuff that surrounds our life in the midst of triathlon. So yeah, it's kind of a microcosm of what we're talking about in a way.
It is 100%. Just
Yeah,
keep showing up.
yeah, and that's the thing, right? It's like um, when I'm sure that normally we kind of come into these podcasts, and I always look forward to it, and that to me has been the absolute essence of what's going on here. Is it's like we don't put stringent boundaries on ourselves and like high pressure situations, and we just like to talk about the sport and how it affects our lives. And I think that's there's something there, as far as training goes too. It's like you're saying, go out and actually look forward to running or a workout of some sort instead of like always being married to the data. And if it doesn't happen, I feel like I'm slowing down in the pool, whatever. Those kind of things can really just wear you down. Just go out and swim, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just go out and ride and remember what it's like to ride a bike, not to cycle, you
Not
know?
to cycle.
Yeah. Well, I just like, yeah, think about it, man. When you're a
No,
kid,
no,
you
I
just
get it.
ride
I
it.
get
You
it.
just go out and ride that bike, man, and
No,
you're
I get it.
I always say, man, I've been saying it a lot lately. It's just like I feel like sometimes when I just go out and ride a bike, I'm riding almost just as fast as I am if I'm trying to cycle.
It's funny you say that. We were taking a walk uh with Hayden and Kona, I think like last week or something, or late last week, and there was another person in our neighborhood that's I guess been seeing me run a lot. Um and like this, around the same time in the morning, and she stopped. She's like, "Hey, so what do you like?" The first words out of her mouth, "What are you training for?"
Mm-hmm.
And we struck up a conversation, but it got to me. It got thinking. It was like, is that the only reason people do things anymore? And is that what the only thing that gets people out of bed? Is that the only reason that people they have to have something to train for, not just I just like to do it. It does good things for me. I don't have really anything. I'm just doing it because I love it, or I'm doing it because I want to get better at it. And you don't have to have a race or an expiration date or this far out objective. It can just be for, love doing it. Like you're not you don't snag somebody on the mountain bike trail like, "Hey man, what are you training for?" Most of the time they're just out there like having fun, or you don't see, couples on the greenway biking together like we saw on the Riverwalk yesterday, like loads and loads of people out because it was so nice yesterday just biking. And not a single thought crossed my mind to be like, "Hey, wait guys, what are you training for?" And it wasn't because it wasn't because what they were, how they were dressed or the way they looked. It was just because you knew that they just went out to ride because they wanted to ride. And again, like I guarantee you they get more benefit from that than showing up or waking, to do a workout that they feel like has to have something that has to be a part of something that if they miss, it'll be like the end of their week and they'll be thoroughly disgusted and disappointed. Like those are just the huge differences that I think that we often don't think about, or I think sometimes athletes are afraid to think about that because they don't know what answer they're going to come to, and then that'll just cause more, inner turmoil on the what and the why behind specific things. But I think it's a good conversation you should always have for yourself, and regardless of the time of year. Yes, it's a great time of year because most people are ending one race calendar and planning a new one for 2020. But all in all, like again, this wasn't to deter you at all from doing it or doing triathlon in general, obviously, because that's definitely not what we're saying. It's a sport you and I both love dearly. I think that the main thing we're trying to get across is just to take time and make sure that the majority of the things in your life, it's a net positive, and that there's nothing wrong with being objective. Or stepping back from long distance and doing sprints for a year, or going from sprints to fulls. If your time availability has totally changed the other way. Because I have a lot of athletes that are like that too. Like they're about to be empty nesters, and they're like, "I'm gonna have so much free time. I think this is the year I can finally do something longer." And so again, I just think it's always healthy to do some reflection and figure out where you are and what you want to do and how you're going to go about it.
Yep.
And we can promise Thursday will be much more pro triathlon.
Oh yeah, we'll dig in deep. We'll have a nice
Yeah.
recovery here and come out strong
Yeah.
Thursday.
That's right. But yeah, so if this is your first time listening, just dig back. Dig back in the archives. See other
You think they're
300.
still in? They're probably like, "Oh my God,
Yeah,
what is?"
exactly. They're like, this was the where I can't wait to check iTunes reviews tomorrow. Um, but yeah, dig back in. There's 309 episodes for you to go back and listen to again. If it wasn't blatantly obvious, we talk about everything on this podcast, not just triathlon. And if you haven't been, hop over our website, crushingiron.com. It is the one-stop shop for all things coaching, training, camps, swim analysis, gear, you name it, it's on there. Go check it out. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have any questions or comments for me, you can always reach out to me, C26Coach@gmail.com. And if you're not a part of our closed group on Facebook and you'd like to be, there's always good conversation in there and lots of supportive and wise individuals willing to help you along your way. You can just hop on Facebook and search Crushing Iron Group, answer a question, we will let you in. And we'll see a lot of you Friday or Saturday in Louisville.
See, we love triathlon. We're going to watch Ironman Louisville.
True, my fourth full of the year.
Yeah, dude.
Excited. One of my favorite cities, as we talked about last week. We have we have a huge core. That's kind of one of our C26 hotspots is Louisville and the surrounding area. Even though a lot of them say they live in Indiana, it's pretty much Louisville. We'll be there. A lot of athletes will be there. So I know Scott Donald posted this yesterday in the closed group. But if you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. Our group is incredibly friendly and kind and generous with basically everything. So if you're up there and you have any questions or needs last minute, find somebody with a C26 gear on and ask for some help. We'll be happy to help you out. You and I will be there Friday, and then we'll be posted up Saturday in our hotel, which is the Marriott on Jefferson. We're going to post up in one of the corners around a TV. We'll have some gear. We'll be watching the Kona broadcast, and we'll be there from, what'd you say, 10 to 2?
I think I said noon to 3.
Noon to 3. All right, same window. But we'll be in there noon to 3, so come on by, say hi. Again, that's noon to 3 at the Marriott on Jefferson, close to 4th Street Live. We'll be in the lobby noon to 3. Come by. If you have any questions or anything about the race as well, don't shy away, and we'll happy to do our best to answer them. Hang out, meet you, and we'll come back with a Triathlon Obsessed podcast on Thursday.
Yep, you got it. All right, man.
All right, dude.
Appreciate it.